good to great SEs know how to get a technical win. I think your exceptional SEs, your top of the top SEs know how to do what you're saying, Art, which is getting the technical close. So it's not just walking away and saying, look, they're comfortable. They've made the choice. We are the solution that is better than all the rest of them. It's better than do nothing. It's better than the three that they've evaluated. I'm done. That's a good to okay SE. I think the best of the best SEs will go through the technical close aspect of saying, all right, so we have validated that we are the best solution that you all are evaluating. When we go and we pitch this to the business, what else needs to be done? Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 27 of Diary of a Sales Engineer. I can tell you all that today I am freezing cold because the weather is starting to turn here in Chicago, but today's conversation is going to be extremely hot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Kruger, joined with my co-host,
Samir Sahai-Gosser. And today we have an exciting guest, Art Fromm, like your mom. He is a dynamic speaker, author, and workshop facilitator who helps sales professionals boost revenue, win rates, margins, and client satisfaction. He's based on a career of spanning engineering, software, sales leadership, sales enablement roles. Art has founded the team sales development, helping transform sales results, in one case boosting up to 22% increase in bookings and a 16-point increase in win rates. Art's practical experience and result-driven approach makes him an impactful speaker or facilitator for organizations seeking to improve sales performance. And for those of you who have not seen it, Art did drop a book pretty recently called Making Seamless Sales. And you know what, Art, let's start there. What inspired you to actually go and produce a book? And from thumbing through it, it's got a lot of activities and pictures and frameworks. Walk us through what inspired you to put something like this for the community.
Sure. And hey, thanks for having me, and welcome to everybody that's watching. And, if you get one or two things out of our discussion, that would be great, because this is all about helping the audience, helping you individually as a sales, pre-sales, or client-facing participant in the whole process. So thank you so much. The book was a result of all of my experience that I wanted to capture and share in a bit of a unique way, because one thing that's different about my path is that I was in pre-sales and sales roles and sales management roles. And then about, believe it or not, 25 years ago, I was moved into sales enablement because of some things that I was doing with the pre-sales team that I was working with at the time. So for the last 25 years, I've been working initially with a global learning company, and then for the last 16 years on my own, helping both pre-sales and sales teams with a variety of sales transformation and improvement. That meant that I have a unique perspective on what it takes to work together better, whereas a lot of sales enablement companies and sales training companies are either focused on one or the other. So this started with, how can sales and pre-sales work together better? Because every time I do a workshop for pre-sales, it's like, when is my sales counterpart going to learn some of this stuff, And for sales, it's like, why isn't my SE doing some of this stuff? So it's, getting them to work together better. And that's what the point of the title is that, generally speaking, a SE or pre-sales person and a AM or salesperson working together seamlessly. And then we can talk more about this later, but the arrow going around here indicates that it's not a once and done, it's a process that continues. So that was the initial genesis of why I wrote this, was to share all that great information.
Awesome. I have a question that jumps out to me right away. You have been in just about every single pre-sales role. What was your favorite and why? And you do not have to be obligated to saying sales engineer for Diary of Sales Engineer. I want you to be honest with the audience right now.
Two stick out to me. So one was when I was a sales engineer manager. And what I loved about that was that I had enough sales experience already, being in the trenches. And by the way, my career started in engineering and implementation of technology. So I was a customer of technology. I was implementing technology in 3 major companies. And so I was the customer on the receiving end of demos and sales presentations. And even there was a little bit of my role that I didn't realize at the time. We were a showcase account for the one software company we were using, and they would bring people into our facility and I'd be the one showing it. And without even being officially in a sales role, I was actually doing that. So with all of that experience behind me, when I was working with my SE teams, I loved it because I had the ability to bring the rest of the sales story. I think all of us have experienced some kind of onboarding, whether you're a new, you move to a new company or when you're a new SE. In the company I was at the time that I was a SE manager, they were doing more product training and things, which is needed. But what I was able to bring was more the consultative selling and much more the richer experience. In fact, that's what moved me into enablement, because they weren't doing that stuff for SEs. Maybe they would take them and what we used to call flea dip them into the sales training. It's like just take the SE and expose them to a little bit of sales training and some of it should rub off. But that is not sufficient. In fact, it's actually counterproductive in many cases. So I asked the company if I could do some training for my pre-sales team, and they said, sure, let's check the results. And they checked the results and they were great. So they said, you are no longer a manager of SEs. You're now coming into sales enablement and running the pre-sales enablement portion for the company, which was about 350 SEs at the time. So it was a pretty big task. So it was that. And then won't go in as much detail, but the other one was a role I had when I was a technical program coordinator. And that is somebody that's involved at the beginning and then works all the way through in more of a technical role, similar to the way an account manager would be engaged at the beginning and all the way through. And what I loved about that was I had such a deep relationship with the client, and was able to understand a lot. I was right there on site very often, and I really was just part of the team. And that was a really great feeling to have that opportunity and be seen as somebody that was so trusted.
Mm-hmm. So having seen, basically all sides of the coin here for pre-sales, what do you think makes up the best AE SE relationships or AM SE relationships? What are the components that are critical?
Mm-hmm. It starts with understanding what the goal is. And so one of the things that I talk about in the book is the ultimate goal in mind is to have the client to be successful. A lot of times we think about the demo as our goal, or even closing the deal is the goal. But especially with SaaS implementations now, the close of the deal isn't really the close, because the customer still needs to consume. They need to renew. They need to expand. And so what it really takes is a great partnership where you can work together in parallel and yet independently and yet interdependently. So in the book, I have a diagram that shows the overlap between sales essentially owning the top part of the relationship for sure, and healthy into the middle part. And by the top, what I mean is if you take a pyramid and look at it as an organizational structure, C-level at the top, manager, director in the middle, and then the doers and so forth at the bottom. The more technical, the higher level is sales all the way down to the middle and part of the bottom. And then pre-sales is definitely the bottom, the middle, and part of the top. And it's that healthy overlap in the middle where the communication needs to happen. And it's more than just, I know there's a lot of advice, and I think it's great about get to know your salesperson or get to know your SE. Wonderful. That's very important. This is deeper. This is like, what are we doing together to move the deal forward? Or what are we doing together to decide this deal is not qualified, it's not worth pursuing? And very often it's the SE that understands that. So there has to be a close enough relationship that the salesperson is willing to listen to the SE and say, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? And maybe you're seeing something I'm missing something. Help me out with what's really going on here. So it's that level of trust and engagement. And there's specific responsibilities that each have that work together, like technical close and business close, leading toward what I now call the commitment to consume instead of a close.
What's really funny there, for just hearing you say that out loud, this idea of get to know your salesperson, get to know your SE, it's something that Samir and I champion quite a bit here on Diary of a Sales Engineer. But, there is like a kind of funny component of that we haven't explored, which I will share with the audience. I can tell you, my wife actually jokes around with me that sometimes I will be talking to my account executives more than I actually see her. That's how many conversations we have on a day-to-day basis about the deals, about the opportunities that we're working. They happen Monday morning, they happen Monday night, they happen Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They happen all the time. There are texts, there are calls that are going on because you want to be interweaved with your rep to know exactly where we are at in the deal. What are we hearing? Are there things that we're missing? Are we thinking about this the same way? You really want to make sure that you're on equal footing and walking the same path together. Because if you're not, what happens is the sort of goals for each of you start to change a little bit. And you want to make sure that you're constantly aligned together on where the deal is at and where you want to get to next. Because you don't want somebody thinking like, all right, great, we're at this step. Next thing I'm thinking about is win. Whereas, your other counterpart is thinking like, okay, we're here. Next step is follow-up meeting to champion this individual. Because you want to make sure that both people are on the same page. Okay, we're here. Ultimate goal is, close one deal and successful customer. But where we're at today, next step is champion this technical user at the company. Next step after that is this. And you want to follow that together. It doesn't necessarily have to follow a structure. Like you don't have to draw a map between you and your AE to say, okay, here's everything that's happening. But you should have those conversations to know exactly where we're at, what's happening next, where do we want to get to, and make sure that you're both in alignment on that same page.
Yeah, it would be really hard to try to work together without that. And in the before COVID, it was a lot more organic. It was easier to do that. And way back when everybody was in an office, it was super easy to do that because you would just be next to each other. You'd be interacting with each other, or at a minimum, you're traveling somewhere to a client engagement and you've had a discussion about it already, and then you're together for dinner and you're there for breakfast and you're both in the car on the way there. And we've lost a lot of that with virtual, so much being virtual now. So huge encouragement to everybody is whatever you could do to continue that discussion, it's really important. And I think sometimes the sales rep is counting on the SE and pre-sales so much because they know that we got it, we know that pre-sales can handle it. However, that shouldn't be the reason for not communicating. Like over communicating is actually better. It's just like anything in life. Think about sports teams. They practice a million different possibilities for the one or two things that might happen. And while we don't have the luxury of that much time, we should be thinking that way in terms of how we're interacting and constantly checking where we're at. And they should appreciate that. My big theme is help me to help you. So if I'm the SE, what can I do to help you as the salesperson, the AE or the AM, to be successful? And part of that is I understand what they know, they understand what I know, and we also know that we have specific areas that we're focused on. So yeah, the communication needs to be overemphasized, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
That what you said there regarding like there used to be a lot more, I guess, in between time that we were exposed to our AE counterpart, SE counterpart, and post COVID, that's gone away a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so, being in the industry, doing enablement for 25 years, and then being in the industry even longer than that, how can we try to get back to those in between times? Like, what have you seen your clients do, or maybe other successful AE, SE partners do that? Like, how can we? Is there a way to replace the in between time? Like, are we just screwed from working from home? We don't have that anymore. Like, how would we like guide the younger generation of tackling this?
Yeah. So it starts with what is the goal in mind, and specifically for the SE, the goal that I believe is we've all heard of technical win, which is often, do a great demo and really hope that they got it and then it can go forward. And I know, again, I'm not saying everybody's doing that, but sometimes we're sort of forced into that because of the scenario you're talking about. So it's got to be more than that. What I define technical close as is that the technical decision maker, so right there, it implies something. It implies that we know enough about the client that we know who is primarily responsible for the technical part of the decision. And that's a starting point with the salesperson is who do you think is the main technical type of decision maker? And the salesperson counterpart to that is that they have business close. And what they're trying to close is the business decision maker. So the SE should know who the business decision maker is, because ultimately the technical decision maker will recommend to the business decision maker. So I think digging deeper into things like, who are we trying to talk with? Who do you know? Who should I know? And what is the message that we're doing for them? And then beyond that, technical close includes why us and why not the alternatives, which includes our biggest competitor as opposed to who we are actually competing against. What's the biggest competitor that everybody
Do
talks
nothing.
about? Do nothing, of course, right? So the biggest competitor, so they will choose to go with us at the exclusion of the alternatives, including do nothing. Well, that's a big ask that we've got to work with our salesperson. And the third component is the technical decision maker will recommend to the business decision maker. So if we just use those three things as a framework to say to our salesperson, what are we doing together to make sure that I can do this successfully so that you could do your business close successfully? I think that goes a long way. And it cuts through, again, wonderful to get to know each other and all that stuff. Perfect. Got to do that. This is the executional strategy of things that really, really matter when it comes to not just prescribing a solution, but engineering a sale. And that's why I really like, even though there's a lot of different variations of the pre-sales title, I think sales engineer is interesting because in a lot of ways we are engineering the sale, and we can be experts of that as well as doing the demo and other things. But there's so much more we could do for the salesperson and get them to realize these are other things that we can do for them and with them that will move the deal forward. My theme is move the deal forward. It's not just about the task at hand. How does that task lead to, like you were saying, Ryan, what's the next thing after that? What's the next thing after that? So that we keep an idea of the overall strategy.
I said things were going to get a little hot today. I have like a scorching hot take that I really want to address here today. I think good to great SEs know how to get a technical win. I think your exceptional SEs, your top of the top SEs, know how to do what you're saying, Art, which is getting the technical close. So it's not just walking away and saying, look, they're comfortable. They've made the choice. We are the solution that is better than all the rest of them. It's better than do nothing. It's better than the three that they've evaluated. I'm done. That's a good to okay SE, right? I think the best of the best SEs will go through the technical close aspect of saying, all right, so we have validated that we are the best solution that you all are evaluating. When we go and we pitch this to the business, what else needs to be done? You can have those conversations one off. They don't always need to include your account executive or your account manager. I encourage people to pick up the phone and actually call their technical champions or get on one-on-one Zooms or Google Meets. Go find a restaurant nearby. Like, it's okay. You should be doing those things to multi-thread the deal, because what will happen as a part of that is you might find out something really impactful from that technical champion that allows you to then go through the technical close to then finish off what needs to be done on the business side and engineer the sale, right?
Mhm.
That's the sales engineering piece. It's not stopping at the technical win. So judging SEs only based on the technical win is okay. It's a decent metric on how to track SE progress to say they're doing what they need to be doing. But that technical close piece is going the extra mile to make sure that we actually bring the business in versus it coming back to then a monetary decision or a do nothing decision. I think that's a really, really strong take that I want to call out today.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it also it resonates at so many different levels, because if we're only doing a technical win, we could inadvertently get ourselves into a feature function comparison, and that's a lose-lose. For the salesperson, it's a lose-lose because that means that they're going to be competing based on price, which is not what we want to do. Without digging deeper, we may be working on something that's not properly qualified. And I know we all want it served up on a silver platter, and there's a lot of studies that show that inadequate discovery and lack of qualification is quite typical. However, it's the SE's job to call, hey, I don't have enough information here. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying no, I'm not going to do it. It's like, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Because if this is all we really have, do we have something that we can do? And to your point also, Ryan, is having the solution. To me, figuring out the solution is the easiest part. That's like a no-brainer. You could probably figure out most likely what your client could use that's your solution. The hard part is, how are they going to decide? What are the barriers keeping, getting in the way of them deciding? And what are we doing to tag team with our salesperson so that they take care of the higher level stuff and we take care of the other stuff, we as in pre-sales? Just to refer to the book for a minute, there's two main things that I want to point out that could be very helpful here. One is the idea about the engagement through sort of hello through to the commitment to consume. And then we can talk about beyond that. That's a whole nother discussion about client success, which I believe should start earlier. But in any event, let's just talk about the hello to the commitment to consume, or the what used to be called typical close. The cadence, the dance that happens is the salesperson automatically is involved more at the beginning, and the pre-sales is not, just by definition of the way the sales cycle goes and the buying cycle. And then the salesperson's going to drop out a little bit because it's more of a technical focus. So pre-sales would begin rising. And I have diagrams in the book in this that go into great detail. The pre-sales starts to rise in the middle, where the evaluation happens and all that. And then pre-sales tapers off as it starts to turn into the business close. All of those places are possibilities for derailment in the relationship, and the handoffs that we have almost pale in comparison to the handoff we expect the client to have, between the business decision maker, the technical decision maker, and then ultimately probably procurement, whatever. So focusing on the decision process is just as important, and engineering the sale to best closure is also super important, starting with business, sales qualification and technical qualification. Now, what I've had the privilege of doing in the book is I am a certified great demo provider. So I teach great demo. I know Peter Cohan. We've been together since 2016. I also deliver plenty of things for John Kerr, Mastering Technical Sales. And I've actually helped him with part of his book and things like that. And both, in fact, in Peter's book and John's book. And Peter's book, I wrote a foreword for his second version of Great Demo, or third version of it. And then the third thing, and why I'm bringing this up, is I also have a relationship for a sales methodology that I introduce in the book. And you don't have to use the full sales methodology, but it goes into the idea of understanding the stakeholders. And I've taken curated pieces of each and gotten permission from each. And each of those, Steve Bistritz is the salesperson. I've gotten them permission from them, and they all wrote forwards in the book, because it stitches together a story that covers everything from hello all the way through. And whatever your role is, you can at least learn about the other role. And that's why I advocate sales, pre-sales, learn about the sales role. What did they do prior to getting you involved? What are they going to do once you're less involved? For the salesperson that's out there, what is pre-sales expecting from you when you get them involved? What do you want them to do so that you can continue through the rest of the close? So it really is a whole ecosystem of much, much more than, like you said, technical win. Okay, fine. That's almost like table stakes. If we're not doing that, we're not doing our job at all.
I think it always shocks my account executive counterparts when I actually ask them, and I'm like, hey, let's sit down today. I want to see, what have you been doing prior to like these meetings getting set? Like, how are you actually going through and doing your outbound messaging? What tool are you using? And actually just like shadowing them for a little bit to understand what's encompassing as a part of their role, just so I have a much better understanding of the things that they're going through on a day-to-day basis. And likewise, I'll do the same thing. I'll say, hey, here's the things that I'll typically go through, and here's how I champion these things internally, and et cetera, et cetera. Because once you start understanding both sides of the coin, it helps you stay aligned together, right? Like, this is a dance to a certain degree, and you got to know how to tango with your counterpart. The other piece of that is, as an SE, you will support multiple A's. They're going to like to dance a little bit differently. Their steps are going to look a bit different. Understand what those differences are. And if you don't ask, then you're always going to be in this misalignment. So it's your goal as you first start getting, introduced together, to start working together for the first time, find out what their styles are and start figuring out how you're going to then integrate with them to make sure that dance is really, what we'll call it, seamless, right?
Yeah,
Like that's part of it.
Yeah. And by the way, on that note, and this isn't real obvious in the book, There is a complimentary PDF that goes with this that is for each kind of chapter, each topic, an activity for you to work with your sales counterparts. So if you're in pre-sales, work with sales, sales work with pre-sales. That allows you to apply the concepts in the book to a real opportunity and allows you automatically to start to work together better and then learn why these concepts can actually help you as you continue to develop this relationship and dig deeper. So if anybody, when you get the book, go to my website, teamsalesdevelopment.com, and grab the free PDF, which is this workbook that you can sit side by side. And I would highly encourage that you just, hey, let's work on this together and see where it goes. Even if it's only part of it that's applicable, no problem. You've learned that part of it of progress toward working together more seamlessly.
With that in mind, we are, rolling into sales kickoff season here very shortly, right? Where we're rounding out mid Q4 almost, and January, February time, sales kickoff comes around and often comes with a lot of sales training. And being someone who's been in the enablement side of things for 25 years, like what would your ideal 3-day sales kickoff look like from an enablement perspective, where you have the BDRs, you have the AEs, you have the SEs, maybe marketing there? Like how would you organize it, right? Imagine you have a workforce of 100 sellers of the various different tiers of employees. Like how would you organize it? How would you break it up? What would you recommend companies think about as we're getting into the sales kickoff season here?
Yeah, there's each, pre-sales and sales definitely does have things that are needing to be a deeper dive for that particular role that the other role doesn't need to hear the whole deep dive. So the way that I would work it is, day one, just as an arbitrary idea or schedule, day one, they're probably in separate rooms learning things that are a deeper dive that they each need to know. In fact, let me back up. Start out with a session altogether of what the high level goal is and the idea of the end in mind, and talk about the buyer process. Then split into the two groups, deeper dive on some particular topics. Part of that deeper dive will be some awareness and part of that overlap. So it's like, this part and where it starts to touch, and then bring them back together and put it in action. I just did a huge sales kickoff with a very, very large cybersecurity company, and they did that. And first of all, I was so impressed that they included pre-sales into the sales kickoff. That's huge. And every single pre-sales person was there. It wasn't like a few select people. They were all there. And it was a very similar concept to this. I had the pre-sales people for a certain period of time while sales was doing a deeper dive on something else. And we covered some of the topic that the sales did, but more at an awareness level, specifically around playbooks. Pre-sales doesn't need to know every last detail about a playbook, and sales doesn't need to know every last detail about how to execute a demo. So we divided up like that. And then on day two, this happened to be 2 days. On day two, the teams were brought together and scattered, sprinkled in. There was teams of sales and pre-sales sitting at tables, executing on various scenarios together based on what they learned the first day so that they could apply it. And then it was shared into the room and takeaways. I mean, it was really, really powerful. That's the type of thing that I would recommend. And happy to facilitate, by the way.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, because I know a lot of my personal experience with sales kickoff. It's like, okay, pre-sales was invited, but then we're shoved into sales specific training. Like, all right, this is your med pick training or your whatever 5-letter acronym sales methodology, and it's like, I'm not going to be cold calling a person to try and extract information like that. It felt very. I think at the end of it, I felt just annoyed. I was like, this is really, I'm not learning anything. Yes, it's interesting. Yes, it's good that I know this, but I don't need to know it in such deep detail.
Yeah, you were flea dipped. You were flea dipped in there. You were just.
Yeah. Yeah. It was almost like our manager was like, hey, executives, we should have the SCs involved. in the kickoff, and the executive's like, "Oh, yeah, sure, come on over. We'll just throw them in with whatever we have planned."
Yeah, that's a shame. It's a huge missed opportunity. There was definitely ways to dig deeper and have meaningful interrelationships and yet separate flavors of what even might be common things.
I think one thing that I will call out, as a part of the sort of like kickoff season, it's a really good opportunity to do that stuff in the middle, right? Like if you're one of those AESE relationships that doesn't have the opportunity to get together frequently, utilize that time at sales kickoff to start being attached together. And what I mean by that is find time to make sure that at the morning before the session starts, you find time to go get coffee together. After it's all done, make sure that you find time to go and be together even afterwards. Sometimes I find that, as a part of these kickoffs, it's like, all right, cool. Once the sessions are all over, we're going to have our AEs go do this and our SEs go do this. And it's like, wait a second, this is my one opportunity to go be with my account executives. This is a good opportunity for me to actually spend time with them. So even if you have events planned that separate you, make sure that you carve out the time to actually go and be together, because you're going to learn so much about somebody, even with just in an hour of being together and strategizing and talking and having normal conversations. Sometimes it's actually good to pull out the work stuff for a little bit and just get to know the person on the other side too, and just say like, hey, we're together, we're in whatever location we're at right now, let me just get to know you. Like, you traveled here today, what did that look like? What does a typical week look like? What do you like to do for fun? I find that that's really helpful because you can start picking up on body language and cues from them. So that way, when you're back on Zoom, you can start to identify those things a little bit more. And if you built a real relationship on, commonalities, it's a good opportunity sometimes to actually throw those into your call, because then you start to connect with the person that you're selling with. And you're like, oh, you know what? So-and-so loves this particular thing. We were just together in blank state, and guess what they did? They love this. This is how they eat, whatever it is. And it makes it a more like conducive sort of buying experience. And they start to see that you aren't just two people. It's really a team effort then, right? Like that's when you become a team. You're not just two individuals trying to go for your own goals. Like, you're actually operating together as a team, and you're starting to do all the little things right. And I think that goes just like the world of a difference in an era where people buy from people more than ever than before.
I think that would build a lot of trust. So here's something that's in the book, and this is actually from a study John Kerr did, and you might have heard this already, but in here, and I think this is going to be intuitively obvious for anybody that's in pre-sales on this call. The studies show that customers inherently trust pre-sales. They don't inherently trust sales. That's the fact. I mean, they feel like sales is trying to sell, trying to push things, trying to just meet a quota. What's ironic about that is, and where your suggestion can come into play very nicely, sales doesn't necessarily automatically trust pre-sales. Isn't that interesting? Yet in a way, they're an internal customer, aren't they? I like to think of us as partners, equal partners, but yet they're an internal customer. So things like that can go a long way to build that trust and help them realize that, when you ask a question, you're not asking it to be a pain. You're not asking it to be the world of no, a showstopper. You're curious and you're really wanting to know. And you can add some value there, because guess what? The customer might have told you a bunch of stuff as a pre-sales person. I describe it like we're like the bartender. The
Mhm.
clients will tell us anything. Bartender, hairdresser, whatever you want to call it, they'll tell us anything. And if many successful salespeople know this, utilize that to find out things from the client, because they won't tell the salesperson. And those types of things that you're mentioning, Ryan, are a good way for pre-sales to build more of that trust, and then for sales to understand we really are in this together. And don't be afraid of the pre-sales person going too far when you've got an understanding of the whole cadence, like you said, that dance that we want to do. Quick funny story, if I could share what I ran into in that world.
Yeah.
Remember I told you a moment ago about that one of my favorite roles was it was called technical program coordinator. So we were involved from the beginning all the way through and had a great relationship. And I had two accounts at the time in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was Duracell, the battery people, and Donaldson. They make industrial air filters. And I was their go-to person. I was on site. They trusted me implicitly. I helped them with all their implementations and everything like that. The company I was working with at the time thought, wait a second now, we have like 4 of you out in the field doing this, and yet we still have a salesperson calling on these companies. So why don't you pick up the sales role and you can be the everything for this client? And they gave us upside potential. So there was no cut in salary. It was a very unique situation. No cut in salary. We had nothing but upside potential. And I thought, gosh, this will be great because I don't know how many salespeople I've cycled through in this relationship, right? They come and go, and we seem to be the constant. So I said, sure, yeah, I'll do it. And the other couple people did too. Well, on Monday morning, and I talk about this in the book, on Monday morning when I went in to introduce myself to my contact who I've been working with for, I don't know what it was, 2 years or something at that point, and I introduced them as now also the account manager salesperson, basically almost immediately they stopped believing 1/3 of what I said. It was like, I'm like, what's going on here? I'm the same person that was here Friday. They're like, no, you're not. You're a salesperson now. You have a quota. You're trying to sell me stuff. And that was such an eye opener for me. I was devastated. I was like, I can't even believe this just happened. It totally didn't go the way I thought. And yet it was very revealing to me of how extreme that is. So where we can build those bridges of internal trust, I think that translates into the client trust and allows us to be seen. Hey, the salesperson's looking to gain trust. By doing some of the things we're talking about, it can help the salesperson gain trust. We look like a team. We don't look like 2 different roles that are coming in and out. So that was my experience as being a sales, and I was an actual salesperson as well, but that was when I got introduced as part of that as well. Took a little while, but we did repair the relationship and things were peachy after that, but not for a little while.
That's so funny that a title can do so much. And I think it's under leveraged. And the reps I've worked with who recognize that as an SCI have, I don't want to say access to different information and to be like strategic about using that uh, as another tool in the toolkit. Those are the ones we end up like closing a lot more deals with because sometimes they'll purposely drop midway through the call and be like, hey, like, Samir will be able to guide the rest of this call. And we talked about that before. Like, it wasn't a surprise to me. But it seemed like a surprise almost. And then all the tea came out, quote unquote, uh, as you said. So yeah, yeah, hear it a lot. People don't trust sales reps, and I think the sales reps have gotten a sleazy car salesman bad look on it. But that's where we can step in as SEs and pass along that information. And ultimately, both of us want to close the deal. So
Yeah. And anybody that's been around for a while knows the sales reps that know how to do it right. And unfortunately, it's more on an individual level. It's like some salesperson has figured out this secret sauce and they're capitalizing on it. And it happens a decent amount, but it's not systematized. It's not talked about. And there's a lot conspiring against sales and pre-sales working together because, first of all, they're usually in 2 different departments. Very often, like you said, at sales kickoffs, it's separate things are not included at all, one part or the other. And then the other thing is even sales training companies and sales methodologies are either mainly for sales or mainly for pre-sales. I know when I was talking with many, many different colleagues, even John Kerr and some of my other colleagues, it's like, that's a difficult thing to tackle because it doesn't seem to have been cracked at a methodological level, right? A methodology around it, like some real thought leadership around that. And yet it's so needed. And studies show that, you know, teams that are figuring this out, a salesperson and a pre-salesperson that has figured this out, their performance is like 37% better than the teams that haven't figured it out. And it's simply in these things like technical close and business close and building trust with each other and having one voice that we can leverage that. It doesn't take a lot of systems and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's literally just trying to work together better. And it's there sitting on the table.
And you know when it happens too, like from at least for me, like as an SE, like I know when I am in with my AEs like that, where we are in that realm of like we trust each other implicitly, where it's like, hey, if you think we need to go gather more information, I trust you to go do that, and it's not going to derail my deal. Also, too, if my rep's like, hey, I think we need to push a little bit harder here, I trust them to go and do that. I don't have doubts or second thoughts about it. But the thing there that's always happening is the communication. We're constantly talking to each other about what the other half is doing. It's not this aspect of flying blind. It's like, hey, I know you're going to go have a conversation with that person. My expectation is as soon as it's done, I get the notes and synopsis of that call that happened. And that way we're sharing information and I know what's happened. And that way I can go take that and say, okay, based on the information that I just gathered from the one-off call that you just had, here's what I think we should be doing as a next step together. Like there's constant communication. And if you're not having that with your account executives, or if you're an account executive watching this and you're not having that with your SE, you need to sit down and start figuring out how to get on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Until you are, like, will you start to really succeed and you're going to see these deal cycles really start to just replicate and start moving faster and faster and faster. You say, what's happening here? And you'll be like, oh, that's right. I have an amazing partnership with the other person that I'm selling with. It's not a battle. I'm not fighting that person and fighting internally and fighting externally. Like it's actually just me and this other person are in a team. We're in this together. We know the goals that are happening. You will see your success rate go to new heights. And if you don't have that today, sit down and try to figure out why. Where are we butting heads at? How can we get better? How do we align on the same page? How can we get into this flow state that is being discussed here today? When you do, you will see enhanced success. All the med pick and sales methodology, seriously, like it starts here at having a great relationship together. This is a teamwork, and the only way it's going to work is by doing it together. Like that is my full stance, wholeheartedly, full stop.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? The buyer, the stakeholders see it too. You know, I tell a story in the book, and I didn't even ask my wife's permission before I used this story, but afterwards she said it's okay. But it was about our first baby when she was pregnant, when we had our first child. Her water broke at like 3 a.m. We went to the hospital, and we got to the hospital, and the first person that greeted us asked us 100 questions. Then we got transferred to the next person. They asked the same 100 questions, went to the next. We've all experienced this, right? Next person, 100 questions, etc. Then we're in the delivery room, and it seemed like every, 30 minutes, somebody else would come in. Now, I understand it's a hospital. They want to make sure everything's fine, but it got redundant. I'm like, whatever happened to the idea of a patient chart? Like, can't you read, can't you find out some of the things that somebody already asked? And I think sometimes our clients feel like that too. It's like, wait a second here. I just went through all that stuff with them. Or, why didn't they share it? So maybe the salesperson did go through all of it. We didn't ask and they didn't tell us. And now we're regurgitating the same story, the same questions. And now that we look disconnected to the client. So it starts at home, but it affects, and the main focus should always be the buyer and helping them through that journey. And yes, unfortunately, one of the properly, I do have a sales methodology that's solid, and it's embedded inside the CRM system. There's an app sits right in there. It's mainly for sales, and it is for proper qualification and discovery. They love it because it helps them close deals. That's what the client that I had that increased their win rate by 16 points from 58% to 74%. Why is that important? Because the data's in there. The patient chart has been started from hello. And everybody think about this too. Automated systems, right? Any automated systems that are happening, automated demo systems, or the consensus type stuff where a client can have their journey through their discovery. Every one of those breadcrumbs is important to know, and we should find that information out, and it should be available to the sales team, both sales and pre-sales, so we can find out what happened prior to our engagement. Because believe me, at whatever point sales or we get engaged, in worst case scenario, an RFP that's way down the buying cycle, they didn't just come up with that overnight. There's a bunch of stuff that happened prior to that. And for us to understand what happened, that's really important. So we've got the best experience for the buyer. And then obviously we've already been working on it, so it's smoother for us too. So it's really seamless buying too, which I think is going to be my next book.
Ooh,
Wow,
a
that's
little
great.
teaser
That's
here.
great. Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a great place for us to kind of wrap up on today, and really appreciate the insights on there. I will say, like, I will raise my hand. I have been on calls before in my career where you get on and you start asking discovery questions, and the prospect says, I've already heard this. Like, why are we doing this? I would imagine most SCs listening have experienced that. So, like, I think that's a good call out. You got to make sure you're on the same page and really make sure that, like, you're working together. You know what's been discussed, you know what's been said. Make sure you're on the same page. I think those are all amazing, amazing call outs. I guess I'll turn it over to you, Samir. Any final thoughts before we let Art leave us today?
Um, no, I mean, I'm glad we got a sneak preview of seamless buying, because I think that is definitely a huge thing. And I like the idea of sales engineering being the like verb, instead of just an adjective. And I thought that was a really cool way of thinking about it. And I'm personally also a fan of sales engineer as our title. So I'm putting my hat in in that bucket over there. But it was a pleasure having you, Art. For those of you who have not heard the book, one more time, Making Seamless Sales, definitely check it out. Anywhere else that they can find you, Art, before we let you go?
Yeah, best to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Art Fromm, so it's just LinkedIn/in/Art Fromm with two M's, Fromm. And then I invite everybody to check out my website. It's not just, what do I offer? In fact, that's very little of it. What's on there is a whole bunch of resources, webinars and other podcasts and things. I'm just finishing tomorrow night. I'm finishing a 12-week podcast series that I've been doing live each week, that has a whole variety of guests. Peter Cohan's already been on there. John Kerr is going to be on there tomorrow night. I also had Steve Bistritz, my sales partner. But my point is, if you go to my website, teamsalesdevelopment.com, check out the events and articles page. There's tons of resources there of insights and things that you can use to share together. Definitely pick up the worksheet. You may even want to pick that up, whether you pick up the book or not. I mean, I want you to pick the book up. And by the way, it is full of a lot of diagrams. So it's a very helpful way to communicate together, to look at these diagrams, because a picture tells 1,000 words and you can get a lot of insights from it. And then also, work together with your salesperson on this. Perhaps buy them the book and say, hey, let's spend a little time on this, have your own little book club, or I can help you with the book club. But wherever I can help anybody with, a sales kickoff, keynote, seminars, workshops, there's a ton of things in my portfolio. What I care about is what you need and what will help you with, allows you to do more consultative selling, be more successful, increase win rate, margin, revenue, recognition, money. That's the goal. This is all about you, the listener. And thank you so much, Ryan and Samir, for having me. It's been a blast. And I look forward to additional ways that we can engage with you and with your audience.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Art. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. All right, Samir. Got to make a call out here because I agree. Sales engineer is the title. That's why we're Diary of a Sales Engineer. That's why we're not Diary of a Solution Consultant, Solution Engineer. You name it. We are sales engineers because both Samir and I are a huge believer that this is part of the role. It's engineering the sale. And as many of you know, I studied engineering in college. I want to keep the engineer title because, look, I worked for it at one point in time. It's nice to have my title, and it makes my parents happy. Okay, like it sounds nice. But there is one thing I do want to talk about that Art said today that just really resonated with me. If we're recapping the episode here, the idea of the technical close, I actually don't think that's something we've really explored much on the podcast so far. I do really think that this is what takes that next step in your sales engineering career, is being able to do that piece and not just being focused on only the technical win, because you can win technically and still lose the deal. And as a more senior SE, I think you should be evaluating that, saying like, I probably didn't do enough to help engineer the final win, meaning I didn't really do the job that I set out to do. And I do think the tighter relationship you have with your account executive, the more you'll start to identify how you are actually engineering that sale and how you're working together to actually drive the final paperwork being sold. So don't stop at just the technical win. I know it feels that way sometimes, or maybe that's what you're being judged on internally. Technical wins are great, and there's a lot of really good reasons why we track the technical wins. But the best of the best SEs know how to do the technical close. They don't just stop at the win.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I think the technical close is a concept that we probably need to champion a little bit more here also, because we've talked about the technical win and like what does it mean to get there, but that's I will. So I have definitely stopped after. Oh yeah, we got the technical win. We proved it out. Now it's the AE's job to bring it to the finish line. But um, early on, I was doing that a lot. But as soon as I started to understand that, okay, we got the technical win. Just because we proved it to our champion doesn't mean the champions proved it to the economic buyer. And that link we can still have influence on, and we can still make it like an impact to actually getting a signature on that dotted line. Because ultimately that is the end goal, regardless if we get the technical win or not. If we don't get the technical close, then it's not it. It doesn't matter. Like I don't get paid commission on a technical win. I don't know if anyone does.
Why stop there, right? Why stop there? Use the leverage that you have as an SE to just simply ask the question to your champion. Now that we validated the technology works, how is the business going to evaluate us, right? We know that we have this sort of technical sign off, but what else needs to be done to buy? How are they going to evaluate us? What do they typically judge on? What do you know about what that process looks like? You'll find a few interesting nuggets. Those interesting nuggets can set you up for success. Because then when you get on that call with your AE, you guys know exactly what to pitch together. That's important. That's such an important, critical piece of this. Otherwise, you go in and he's like, hey, I know we validated the technology. This sounds great. Here's the price. And then the conversation dies off and you never hear from him again. What if quality mattered? Or what if something else mattered to them that you're not discussing? Or maybe there was something that they really cared about, or a use case that wasn't explored. Wouldn't it be helpful to get on that call and say, look, I know we validated the technology works, but it sounds like we might want to spend a little bit more time on blank together. How does that sound for you? And then you can validate that. And then when you get to the pricing, guess what happens? Everyone feels nice and bubbly and they're all like, wow, this is amazing. This account team has crushed it. That's the technical close. That there is a difference.
Yeah. So we'll encourage everyone to start thinking about the technical close. And the technical win is one step towards the technical close, which is the ultimate goal, is to get the technical close.
You want to get paid, right? You want to get paid. You don't get paid on technical wins. Yeah, for the most part, you know.
For the most part.
Yeah.
But I mean, I thought Art had very interesting background and like the being in the role for so long. I love having guests that have just been doing the job almost as long as we've been alive. Like it's sometimes mind blowing to think about it like that. Any other things that popped out to you while we were chatting with him?
I just think like we talk about a lot, but this dance between the AE and SE, it's more important now than ever before. And I really think you should be sitting down with your account executives and addressing where you're at. And if you don't feel like you're operating fully, then it's time to start having conversations about where you're not operating fully on and figure those things out together. I think, you know, as I look at the title of this book, Making Seamless Sales, right? Like it is, you want to make it the seamless environment for your buyers. And ultimately that starts with the relationship that you all have together. And as a reminder, like your AEs are focused on something different than you are as an SE. So communicate that information, know what they do too, like understand what they do, sit down for a few hours. Like, I am blanking on the name of the tool where like they can do outbound calling and it dials like 10 numbers concurrently. Listen to that. It's crazy. It's awesome. It is an awesome, cool tool. Like you should understand the things that they're doing or how they're sending their outbound messages, or even taking a look at the messaging that they're sending. Might say like, hey, actually, based on this messaging, I'd maybe actually add in something like this. Try that out. Maybe you can help out. maybe you can send an outbound message to somebody else that you're connected with on LinkedIn. That's helpful too. You got to sit down and actually look at their account list and say, who am I connected with at these different places? Like there's so many intricate little things to do. So I don't want to like ramble on forever about it, but it is really, really important. I think that's something that Art really paints a picture on. And to your point, it's amazing to have another guest like Art on to share the experience that he's gone through, and having experienced all of the sale, right? To understand, like, I've seen it all. Here's what works really well. Like, nobody better to learn from that somebody that has touched every single position. Like, that's a really good person to listen to.
And another benefit of shadowing your AEs day to day and seeing what they're actually sharing with buyers before you get involved is then you can cherry pick that during your involvement. All of a sudden, you're using language that the buyer's already seen or heard or read, and it will like subliminally make it feel seamless across their experience of, oh, the first person I contact was using this phrasing. Then the second person was also using similar phrasing. And the third person using similar phrasing. They're all rowing in the same direction. They're all hitting on the same points. They reached out to me for the first place because I had this problem, and they're all of them are constantly coming back to it. So it's only going to help you to understand how they are working, and then you can also help them understand how you are working. So now when you're asking those obscure questions, the AE has context of, oh, Samir's asking this question because he's anticipating something to whether or not to show or whether or not to double click on, and that's where this question's coming from. It's not just to like waste time or throw more blockers or hurdles into the deal. But with that, I think final words will be focus on the technical close, and even sharing that with your AEs, being like, hey, yes, the technical win's important to me, but more importantly is the technical close. I am going towards that signature just like you. And using that type of language will probably, no guarantees here, but increase your win rates. If all of a sudden you are saying, hey, the technical win's important to me, but the technical close is what I'm driving towards.
Watch the difference in your relationship with your reps too. Just by saying that one particular thing, watch the response from them when they know that you are a counterpart driving to the same outcome, right? Like you're not working on two different goals. You're working on the same goal. It's important to communicate that message with them.
All right. Till next time. We'll see you all soon.
See you, everyone.